Hey everyone, it's Anthony Allen Ramos, and we are continuing to celebrate National Reading Month by featuring important LGBTQ authors as part of our Books, Not Bans ongoing campaign. This week, we are chatting with Maia Kobabe, whose book, Gender Queer, a memoir, is out now and is really at the center of this book ban, one of the most banned books. But we're going to talk about that. But before we do talk about that, it is such an important book. I would love, Maia, if you would please read a small passage.
Yes. This is from page 65. My deepest emotional relationships have always been with women. Did that mean I was a lesbian? But my sexual fantasies involved two male partners. Was I a gay boy trapped in a girl's body? The knowledge of a third option slept like a seed under the soil. And this is page 191. Some people are born in the mountains while others are born by the sea. Some people are happy to live in the place they were born, while others must make a journey to reach the climate in which they can flourish and grow. Between the ocean and the mountains is a wild forest. That is where I want to make my home.
Thank you for that. And, you know, this book, so much has been said about it. It's such an important book. Obviously, it's a memoir. It's based on your own experience. But for anyone who has not heard of it or hasn't found it yet, tell us a little bit about what it means and what, you know, your intention for putting it out there is about.
Yeah, of course. So as you said, this book is a memoir. It is a story of my own childhood and young adult years, wrestling with gender identity and sexuality and coming out in an era in which I really didn't feel like I had language for the concepts of non-binary identity. And I didn't really have trans or non-binary role models until I grew up and was in grad school. So really what it is about is feeling very non-binary and queer, and then later learning how to express that and then sharing that with my community and sort of the reactions of my peers and family members and sort of professional community.
And this book, like you said, young adult experience, you've said, you know, I totally understand it may not be for super young people, but for young adults, it's, you know, was your own experience. You know, I always think, what would it have meant for you to have had this book at that time in your life when you were really looking for and figuring out who you are?
Oh my gosh. I mean, having a book like this or any book that sort of explored specifically non-binary identity would have probably taken 10 years of like confusion and uncertainty out of my life. I started questioning these topics when I was like 12, 13 years old, and then didn't come out as non-binary until I was 25. So I just think a lot how that process could have been shortened, or how I could have just spent less years confused, basically.
Yeah, and you would think about all of the kids out there that have found the book and, you know, probably are just, you know, saying finally. But, you know, let's be, you know, real with what's happening right now. I think, you know, over the past year, we've seen a huge uptick in censorship that largely targets LGBTQIA books and children's books, with legislators and anti-LGBTQ groups trying to get the books banned from schools, libraries. Your book has been at the center of that. What has it been like for you to kind of see this all happening?
It's been very strange. I definitely think that my book is uniquely vulnerable because it is a comic and because people can very quickly flip open to one or two images that they don't agree with or make them uncomfortable and share those out of context on social media and not read the whole book or even more than 1 to 2 pages of the book and quickly judge it. I also think the fact that it has the words gender and queer in the title means that it comes up very easily if someone is keyword searching for books that they already think they're not going to agree with.
Mhm.
All of that said, in some ways, it almost makes it feel like it's not really about my story at all. It's about, we're in this sort of viral social media moment where people are challenging books. I think it got made quite a talking point in the last midterm elections in 2021. And so in some ways, I feel like my book came out at 3 years ago almost at this point, and it won several awards from the American Library Association, which meant that it was well stocked in many libraries, including some school libraries. And so when people were like, oh gosh, let's see if this book is in my my library, my like high school library, it was there because librarians tend to buy books that win Stonewall Book Awards and Alex Awards. So I'm doing pretty good at not taking it personally. It doesn't in some ways, it doesn't really feel like a personal attack on my story. It feels like a generalized attack on queer and trans narratives that my book has got swept up in.
And it's interesting. So one of the complaints, I guess, was one of the drawings in it, which actually is based off of something that is a classic piece of art that's in a museum. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there's one scene from my teenage years where I am having a little teenage sexual fantasy, and it is there's sort of a joke. It says it's based on Plato's Symposium, which is of course a classic work of Greek literature that has been read for thousands of years and is widely assigned in schools. I was assigned to read it both in high school and then later also in college. And in it, during the Greek philosophers are debating various types of love, and they talk about like queer relationships very sort of broadly in the text. And that was one of very few books that I remember reading in high school, specifically that I was assigned, that really talked about queer identities at all. I don't think it's the best representation. I wish I had gotten assigned other queer books and that I'd read something a little bit more modern and contemporary. But that's what I was assigned. So I did kind of like latch onto it as a teenager. So there's one drawing of me thinking of sort of like an image that's like from a Greek pottery vase. And that image has made people very upset, and it is indeed, it is based on a pottery vase that is held in the Bodleian Library collection, museum library collection in England. So
Well, I mean, that's
got to be mad about the classics.
I guess that's crazy. I mean, and that brings up another part of this, thinking about, I mean, there's been nearly 100 probably at this point anti-LGBTQ school policy bills that have been introduced, which, include, banning teachers from having LGBTQ topics in the classroom, trans kids in sports, gender affirming healthcare, so many different things. Why do you think that schools are the new battleground for anti-LGBTQ activists?
I mean, part of it is that young people don't have quite as full rights as adults, and that it's like you can pass legislation affecting youth that you can't pass affecting adults. I think is part of it. I also think that there's slightly different rights that you have when you're on a school campus. Like they can ban things like cigarettes or drugs, things that shouldn't be on a school campus. So now they're trying to take that farther to ban things that should be allowed, such as books and education and queer identities and conversations about important life topics like racism, anti-racism, sex ed, abortion, all of these things that teenagers really need to know about. And I think a lot of it is fear mongering. I think that it's very easy to make an argument that you're trying to protect young people, and that will, of course, emotionally affect parents who, of course, want to protect their children. Every parent wants to protect their children. But I think it is going, of course, too far. And I think it is very targeted at queer youth, and in the language of a lot of the bills, including the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida and a lot of the anti-trans legislation in Texas, they're really trying to obfuscate like the fact that it is directly attacking trans and non-binary and queer youth by sort of making these generalized statements about the safety of young people. So it's like a lot of the bills are being written in very bad faith.
Well, no, thank you for sharing that. I mean, and as crazy as all that is, I mean, there's a positive to every side. What have been some of the pleasant and the great things that kids or families have said to you or reached out to you, whether it's on social media or beyond, about what your book meant to them?
I've been receiving so many responses. I mean, ever since the book came out, I've been getting almost one email a week. And then at various times, there'll be sort of an uptick of multiple emails per week from usually young readers, but also readers who are in their 30s and sometimes in their
Yeah.
50s or 60s saying, this book meant so much to me. This book helped me understand who I am, or this book helped me have a conversation with my partner or my family or my friends and explain to them, what gender means to me and what I mean when I ask for non-binary pronouns and why that's so important. I've had people tell me the book made them feel seen and loved and less alone, and just like really, really powerful things, the kind of things that are just feed you as an author and make you realize like this is why it's important to write books. Like this is why doing this work is important and valuable. And it means so much. It means so much to hear from those readers.
That is what it's all about. Representation, feeling seen. That's so great. I'm so glad you're having those messages. What's next for you? What do you have in the works?
I am working on another graphic novel. It is once again about a teenager who is questioning gender identity and sexuality and all of those topics. This story is fictional. I'm co-writing it with a friend, a fellow non-binary cartoonist, Lucky Srikumar. We're working on it together. And I'm really, really jazzed about it. It does not yet have a title and it has not yet been sold, but we have a full script and we are so excited to work on it this year. So
Well, Maya, thank you so much for this chat. And just a reminder, everyone, Maia Kobabe's book, Gender Queer, a Memoir, is available right now. You can get it in bookstores and online. And Maya, I think it's going to be available in some new versions, right?
yes, we're releasing a special hardcover edition in summer 22 with new cover art and an
Huh?
intro and an afterword. The book has also been translated into Spanish, Czech, and Polish, and there's a French edition due out this summer.
Well, we are happy to hear it. That's awesome. Congrats again.